Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 295, Sharpedo Attack. The episode begins with Ash and the gang still aboard the SS Wingle, heading to Dewford Island with the help of Mr. Briny. As Ash and the gang were very grateful that Mr. Briny was driving, since this allowed them to admire the calm sea and salty air, and the overall beautiful and peaceful atmosphere, with Mr. Briny admitting that these conditions were perfect for sailing, being so perfect that Ash and the gang would arrive at Dewford Island in time for nightfall. Ash eagerly asked for a more specific time frame, as he was very excited to have his gym battle, and this led Mr. Briny to admit that it would only be a few short hours, as nightfall was almost approaching. So Ash got very excited, realizing that if they arrived at night, then he would only have to wait until morning to challenge the Dewford Gym. Ash proceeded to ask Pikachu if he was already ready for their second Hoenn Gym battle, and Pikachu responded by giving Ash a nod of determination, confirming that he was ready. Knowing that they only had a relatively short time left on the boat, May took the opportunity to send out her Torchic and Wurmple, so that they could enjoy the boat ride and experience some of the immensely fresh air. And this led Ash and Brock to send out their Pokemon to get some fresh air and enjoy the boat ride as well, as Ash sent out his Tailo and Trico, and Brock sent out his Fortress and Lotad, hoping that all the Pokemon could have a little mini hangout together. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had finally repaired none other than their Magikarp sub, and were riding it, chasing after Ash and the gang in the SS Wingle, also of course spying on them through the Magikarp sub's periscope, pedaling as fast as they could to keep up to the SS Wingle, talking about their plan to get Pikachu once again. However, Jessie soon noticed that Mr. Briny had put the pedal to the metal and had increased the ship's speed, so this forced Jessie to order James and Meowth to pedal harder so they could catch up, with Jessie joining in as well, as the three of them pedaled extremely fast, being motivated by their want to capture Pikachu. However, they still weren't able to catch up, so Jessie instructed James and Meowth to shift into goddamn overdrive as they pedaled even harder than before, therefore having to keep Pikachu in their mind for longer than ever before. Much to Jessie's dismay, though, her thoughts about catching Pikachu were soon interrupted by her hatred for Wobbuffet as it forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, forcing Jessie to recall it, as she angrily yelled at it. Meanwhile, back on the SS Wingle, just as Ash and the gang had wanted, their Pokemon were having plenty of fun and experiencing plenty of relaxation. As Wurmple was eating some Pokemon food before falling asleep, Trico was looking out to the sea, laying on the boat, with its twig in its mouth. Fortress was just straight up sleeping, and Lotad was spraying Pikachu and Torchic, much to their enjoyment. As for Tailo and Pico, they were flying above the ship, becoming friends. Seeing all the Pokemon having fun, May began to get a little jealous, as she stated that she wanted to have some fun as well, which involved taking a swim before they arrived in Dewford, explaining that she wanted to experience how great the ocean was, aside from just the view. She wanted to actually feel the ocean. Max wanted to go swimming as well, and suggested that they went right now, with May agreeing, though figured that she and Max should probably ask Mr. Briny if it was okay first, and Mr. Briny did say that it was okay for them to go swimming, but stated that they should wait a little bit, as he knew a place that was perfect for swimming, so they should go there to do it. May and Max agreed, excited by the prospect of a place that was good for swimming, but Ash protested that they shouldn't stop at all, and simply just go to Dewford right away, because he wanted to participate in his gym battle as quick as possible, hoping that he could perhaps even partake in it today, if they managed to get there before nightfall. No one seemed very supportive of this, so Ash looked to Pikachu for support, hoping that if Pikachu showed enough desire to go to the Dewford Gym immediately, then hopefully everyone else would be okay with that. However, Pikachu simply ignored Ash, as it was too busy relaxing and getting sprayed by Lotad with Torchic to hear what Ash was saying. May saw Pikachu's behavior and laughed, stating that Pikachu must have agreed with everyone else and not Ash, since it wasn't jumping at the chance to defend him. Ash was annoyed by both May's comment and Pikachu ignoring him, and remained adamant that they should be heading to Dewford immediately. However, Max then reminded Ash about his battle against Roxanne back in Rustboro City, and complimented how great of a battle it was, and how well Ash did, with everyone else agreeing. We then see a flashback of the Rustboro gym battle between, particularly, Pikachu and Nosepass, because that was the most important battle, and sure enough, the crowd went wild upon seeing Pikachu win. The reason why Max reminded Ash of his Rustboro gym battle was because he was essentially trying to convince Ash that he had just had a gym battle, so he didn't need to do a second one right away, and also stated that because of Ash's great performance in the gym battle, he deserved a little break anyways. Brock and May then complimented Ash's battling against Roxanne and a Nosepass as well, knowing what Max was doing. He was essentially trying to gas Ash up so that he would appreciate them so much that he would let them take a break, revealing that it wasn't just May and Max who wanted a break, but also Brock, despite not having any plans to go swimming. Ash, however, despite realizing that he did deserve a reward for beating Roxanne, still thought that he shouldn't give himself a break so that he could continue his journey to beat all the gyms and eventually become a Pokemon master, leaving Max, Brock, and May to convince him that him taking one break to have everyone else go for a swim wouldn't deter him from becoming a Pokemon master, and one break wasn't going to do shit. Ash was still unconvinced, so then Max got the idea to use Ash's want to battle so much to his advantage, as he said that while May, Max, and Brock were swimming, Ash could take the opportunity to do some training. Ash was finally convinced by this, meaning that he now allowed Max, May, and Brock to have some relaxation time when they arrived at the swimming spot. Max then snickered to himself, now making a mental note that whenever he wanted Ash to agree to something, all he had to do was bring up training. With that, Mr. Briny changed the boat's course toward a small island shaped like a crescent moon, which was the place where he thought there would be good swimming. As everyone began heading there, Pikachu suddenly woke up, while the rest of the Pokemon were still sleeping by this point to regain their energy, and Pikachu excitedly jumped on Ash's shoulder, wondering where they were going now, as Ash pointed to the island in the distance. Unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, while they were heading towards the island, they were being followed by a dark figure swimming after them from under the water, which happened to be different from Team Rocket's Magikarp sub. Soon enough, the boat pulled into the bay of the island, while Max commented on how beautiful it looked, and Brock asked what the island was, and what it was called and shit, because he'd never seen it before, leading Mr. Briny to reveal that it didn't have a name, because he was the one who discovered the island, and it wasn't on any map. Brock checked his guidebook to be sure of this, and sure enough, he couldn't find it, and asked how Mr. Briny was able to find this island in the first place, leading Mr. Briny to reveal that he found it by accident when he was a young sailor, and would come to this island sometimes to just relax. Just then, May quickly went into the boat's cabin and changed into a pink and polka-dotted swimsuit, stating that she got this swimsuit just before they left Rustboro City. Wow, so she wasn't even using the ones that she bought 2 episodes ago, back when she literally shopped until she dropped? Damn. After some flaunting around in her swimsuit, wanting to show it off, she eventually dived into the water and resurfaced a few seconds later and told everyone that the water felt great, making Max excited as he took off his shirt and jumped in as well. And the two siblings began to mess around with each other, splashing each other, laughing. Well, unbeknownst to them, the thing underneath the water from earlier was still watching them, and heard their laughter. Seeing how much fun Max and May were having, Brock and even Ash wanted to jump in the water as well. So, Brock asked if any of the Pokemon wanted to get inside the water. With all of the Pokemon saying yeah, aside from Torchic, leading Ash to question why, as Brock laughed, reminding Ash that it was a fire type, so it didn't like water. Right before any of the Pokemon, Ash and Brock, could dive in though, they then panicked as they heard May and Max's screaming. So, they rushed to the side of the boat to see that they were surrounded by a group of Sharpedo. Mr. Briny was obviously concerned for May and Max's safety, but he got an idea as he told Pico to hurry and pick them up. So Pico flew over to them, and Max and May grabbed Pico's feet, and Pico, despite the extra weight on its bottom, managed to lift them up from the water and slowly fly toward the SS Wingle. However, things weren't going smoothly, as several Sharpedo were leaping up from the water to try and bite May and Max. So this led Ash to send out his Tailo to help and try and tackle the Sharpedo as they jumped out of the water. Tailo wasn't able to stop the Sharpedo alone though, as the Sharpedo was able to jump up and bruise Max's leg using Rough Skin, leading Mr. Briny to talk about the Rough Skin ability and state how it was essentially when a Pokemon's skin was so rough that it could harm you just upon touching it. Ironically, upon hearing this, Max was actually impressed by the Sharpedo and their abilities, even though they were trying to hurt him. Ash then had his Pikachu help out Tailo by trying to Thunderbolt the Sharpedo. And while this did weaken the Sharpedo, they were still trying to bite May and Max a little bit. Thankfully though, Pico then arrived back over the SS Wingle and dropped them onto the deck, as Max and May breathed a sigh of relief, with Mr. Briny asking if they were okay, with May and Max confirming this, though admitting that they were obviously shaken up from the experience. However, May then got very angry as she realized that her bathing suit was tore up, and this obviously angered her since she just fucking bought the thing, so she went to the edge of the boat to yell at the Sharpedos. However, when one of them jumped at her in anger back, she walked away from the edge of the boat, scared as fuck. Max noticed the leg of his swim trunks was damaged as well, but he didn't really care about this, as he merely just held his leg, trying to stop the pain from the rough skin injury. Brock checked on Max's injury and confirmed the rough skin problem, admitting to Max that Sharpedo's skin was capable of leaving cuts if touched. Ash was kind of intrigued by this, just like Max was, so he used his Pokedex on the Sharpedo, though stopped when he noticed that all of the Sharpedo were glaring at everyone aboard the SS Wingle. Mr. Briny knew that the Sharpedo were likely going to attack, so warned Ash and the gang that it was now time that they make their exit to Dewford, as if they didn't leave as fast as possible, then the Sharpedo would attack the ship. And he reminded Ash and the gang that the Sharpedo were very dangerous with their rough skin, even for the structure of his high-tech SS Wingle. Before Briny could actually move the SS Wingle, though, sure enough, the Sharpedo group surrounded the boat and began to attack it, ramming it back and forth, causing Ash and the gang to lose their balance, rocking around the boat. Things only got worse as the leader of the Sharpedo group, the one that had been tailing Ash and the gang for a while, being the mysterious thing under the water, dived underwater and hit the boat from underneath. This led Ash to order Pikachu to use another Thunderbolt, which was able to hurt the entire group of Sharpedo enough for them to stop attacking for a little bit, allowing Ash and the gang and Mr. Briny to leave away from the Sharpedo, going in another direction towards the actual island, not the water surrounding it, and Ash and the gang soon docked there, hoping that they would be safe on land. Leaving the Sharpedo in the water, Ash and the gang stayed on the actual island for a bit until it got pretty late out, and Ash realized that they weren't making it to Dewford by night. So Ash and the gang then made a bonfire, both so that they had light and so that they had a fire to make dinner with. Once Brock made dinner, he then fed it to Max, May, himself, Ash, Mr. Briny, and all of their Pokemon, with Mr. Briny especially commenting on how good the food was since it was the first time he had had Brock's cooking. Brock then offered Ash and the gang and Mr. Briny all some tea. Everyone enjoyed the tea and told stories around the fire and shit like that, leading Ash to admit that he was having fun, despite not heading to Dewford, although he did still want to go to Dewford, obviously. So he asked Mr. Briny when he thought they would be able to go back into the water and be safe from the Sharpedo, so that they could go for Dewford. Unfortunately, Mr. Briny stated his belief that it would be very difficult to go to Dewford because the Sharpedo were still around, pointing to 3 Sharpedo in particular that were patrolling the water and acting as lookouts, coming up from underneath several times, basically acting as guards to make sure that no one interfered with their territory and came into the water, including Ash and the gang. Ash asked Mr. Briny how he knew that certain Sharpedo were acting as lookouts, specifically with Mr. Briny simply stating that he knew a lot about Sharpedo because they would never leave sailors alone. So he had heard many stories from his former sailor acquaintances about their terrible experiences with Sharpedo, with Brock cutting in and admitting that even he had heard sailors telling horrible stories about Sharpedo. Brock then added that in all of those stories that he had heard, though, the Sharpedo were only known for attacking individually, not in groups, and Mr. Briny confirmed this as well, so they were both confused as to why the Sharpedo were acting in a group this time. Ash then cut Brock and Briny off, stating that shit didn't matter. What mattered was finding a way to get back into the water so that they could go to Dewford, and suggested that Ash and the gang merely battle the Sharpedo to scare them off, but Max cut in, reminding Ash that this wasn't a good idea since there were a lot of Sharpedo, and they only had a total of 8 Pokemon on them. However, Brock admitted that Ash's battling idea could still be a good idea, although only if they focused on one specific Sharpedo, being the leader, which happened to be the largest one. Believing that if Ash and the gang were able to take out the Sharpedo's leader, then the other Sharpedo may respect them and view Ash and the gang as their leaders, so therefore they would obey and go away so that they couldn't attack Ash and the gang when they tried to get to Dewford. Although Brock did warn that battling the leader could be difficult, as the leader appeared to be a good problem solver since it was able to figure out how to ram the SS Wingle from underneath, where the other Sharpedo couldn't figure out how to do this, making May and Max scared, but they, along with Ash and Briny, decided to go along with Brock's idea of challenging the leader, as they couldn't come up with anything else. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had just surfaced nearby the island that Ash and the gang were on, and were exhausted, complaining of hunger, which was why they had stopped trailing Ash and the gang, since they were so tired that they could barely pedal anymore, and they just happened to show up by the island. They weren't even intentionally following anymore. Jessie then noticed the island and got excited, because she knew that the island could potentially have food on it that could quell their hunger, with Meowth adding that the island could even have supplies on it, and maybe even Ash and the gang, since they were clearly heading somewhere, so maybe this was the island where they were going, not knowing about Dewford. Before Team Rocket could make their way over to the island, though, of course, the Sharpedo were still surrounding it, and one of the Sharpedo went up to Team Rocket's Magikarp sub and rammed it from the side. And they continued to do so rapidly, making Meowth and Jessie extremely scared as they turned to James, wanting him to be the man and do something, although they noticed James was literally frozen with fear. However, this wasn't because of the one Sharpedo ramming them, but because James had noticed that the entire group of Sharpedo were now surrounding their sub, with James remarking his belief that they were screwed and were going to die being killed by all these Sharpedo. However, Jessie wasn't going to let that happen, as she sent out her Survivor and commanded it to use Poison Tail, and it managed to land a hit on the leader Sharpedo. This just made the leader angry, though, as it stopped Survivor from using another Poison Tail by biting Survivor's tail. This actually ended up working in Team Rocket's favor, though, as now Survivor could use another Poison Tail while its tail was inside Sharpedo's mouth, so this just damaged the leader even further. Jessie was confident that she could just continue to have Survivor use Poison Tail, but this was proven wrong, as all of the Sharpedo resurfaced from underneath the water, even though the leader had ordered them to let it protect them himself, and all the Sharpedo used a headbutt on Team Rocket's Magikarp sub to send them blasting off. However, as Team Rocket were blasting off, they were shocked as Jessie took notice of the SS Wingle at the bay of the island, and came to the conclusion that Ash and the gang must have been there, just as they had hoped, and declared that they would return the next day to steal Pikachu from the island. Back on the actual island, Ash and the gang went to bed for the night, hoping that the Sharpedo would disappear by morning, but of course, they didn't, and were still surrounding the island, with a lot of them being in the bay itself. This made Ash and the gang realize that they were going to have to come up with a plan to stop the Sharpedo and their leader. Ash eventually came up with something, getting a bucket from the SS Wingle and stepping inside of it, with Pikachu joining in as well, as Ash instructed Pico and his Tailo to pull them across the water while they were hanging on to them with rope, basically creating a makeshift water ski in hopes of getting the Sharpedo's attention. Sure enough, as Ash rode in the bucket, being pulled by Pico and Tailo, while in his swimsuit, with Brock, Mr. Briny, May, and Max watching in their swimsuits, with May having a new yellow one, Ash teased the Sharpedo, cockily telling them to follow him, and they angrily obliged, charging towards him, leading Ash to speed away as Pico and Tailo picked up speed, causing a chase to ensue. However, the leader Sharpedo suspected that this could have been a trick by Ash and the gang to lure them somewhere, so it stayed behind, ordering the rest of the Sharpedo to do the work of going after them to sea. Eventually, Ash was able to lead the Sharpedo, with the exception of the leader obviously, out of the bay and into the open sea. This was just what Ash and the gang had planned though, as now the leader was by itself in the bay. So, May, Max, Brock, and Mr. Briny did their part of the plan, which was to pull a rope that Mr. Briny had gotten from his SS Wingle, and once they pulled this rope, it was revealed that they had placed a wooden fence tied to it in the water, and this wooden fence came up and trapped the Sharpedo in the bay. The leader anyways. The Sharpedo obviously wasn't pleased with being trapped though, as it proceeded to use Headbutt to ram the fence over and over, which pulled on the rope, eventually yanking it from Max and Mr. Briny's hands, as well as Brock's. Although May kept holding on, determined to keep the Sharpedo trapped and keep the fence up. But since she was holding on, and Sharpedo was applying too much force, this caused her to fly forward and land in the water, and the Sharpedo quickly charged at her to try and kill her, which May saw when she surfaced at the water after initially landing underneath, and she began to scream and panic, as did Max and Mr. Briny. However, Brock didn't panic, as he quickly sent out Lotad, while Mr. Briny and Max weren't even watching at this point, because they were too scared. However, Lotad quickly landed in the water and blocked the way between May and the Sharpedo by stopping the Sharpedo in its tracks, since it was distracting it by staring at it with its weird stare. With the Sharpedo distracted, Max instructed May to grab a hold of the rope as he, Brock, and Mr. Briny pulled the rope to shore, bringing May to shore, as well as putting the fence that Sharpedo had managed to hit back up, trapping the Sharpedo yet again. Once May was now back on the island safely, Ash managed to return to the island as well, since Pico and Talo were able to fly Ash and Pikachu up above the fence, still in their bucket. So they arrived at the island, and were glad to see that May was safe, making sure that she was okay, which she confirmed. With the Sharpedo now trapped, Brock went through with his plan of stopping the leader Sharpedo, as Sharpedo tried to attack Lotad now, but Brock had Lotad strike first with a water gun. Lotad must have been too entranced and zoned out though, as it just sat there, not obliging to Brock's commands, allowing Sharpedo to use Bite on it and swim around carrying Lotad in its mouth. Since Lotad was so zoned out though, it didn't even feel the bite, making Brock glad, as he simply told Lotad to listen to him this time and use water gun, and this time Lotad obliged, firing a huge water gun inside Sharpedo's mouth, forcing Sharpedo to let go of Lotad, freeing it. Brock then ordered Lotad to follow up with yet another water gun, but Lotad didn't oblige again this time, although this was because it realized that something off was going on with Sharpedo, since it wasn't trying to attack it, it was just sitting there. So Lotad swam up to it to examine it, and sure enough, Sharpedo continued to just sit there, doing nothing. But then suddenly, its eyes closed as it passed out and flipped over, keeling over in the water, shocking Ash and the gang, especially Brock, who felt bad, thinking that Lotad's water gun was so powerful that it may have even fucking killed the Sharpedo. So Brock swam out to the Sharpedo and basically grabbed it while it was still passed out and took it by the shore of the island so that he could further examine it to see what was wrong, and it was then that Brock noticed that the Sharpedo seemed to be poisoned. As Brock debated how this could have been possible, Max suggested what was probably correct, being that the leader Sharpedo may have gotten into a fight with a Tentacruel, and the Tentacruel could have used a poisonous attack. Brock then tries to give the Sharpedo some medicine to make it feel better, but when he looked in his bag, he unfortunately realized that he didn't have any medicine, so the best he could do was feed Sharpedo some of his Pokemon food to keep its strength up. Also offering the Sharpedo words of encouragement, telling it that it would be fine, even though he wasn't sure of this himself, and unfortunately, Sharpedo didn't appear to be fine, as it didn't wake up. Brock was discouraged by this, leading Mr. Briny to comfort him, stating that Brock was doing a good job and the best that he could. This comment just motivated Brock to continue to look after the Sharpedo, declaring to Ash and the gang and Briny that Sharpedo would likely need continuous care even around the clock, and he was willing to help it even during those hours, with Lotad offering to help as well, concerned about the Sharpedo after their steering contest. Brock wasn't lying though, because as Ash and the gang ate dinner that night, setting up the bonfire again, they were eating Mr. Briny's rations that he kept stored on his boat, because Brock was too busy still taking care of the Sharpedo to cook, or even eat himself for that matter. Brock had even set up a little mini fire of his own by the Sharpedo to warm it up in hopes that heat could expel the poison, as he continued to offer the passed out Sharpedo words of comfort, urging it to overcome the poison's effects. Ash and the gang and Briny were very impressed by Brock's efforts to help the Sharpedo, with May commenting that Brock must really care for Pokemon since he was helping the ones who tried to harm him and his Lotad, with Ash, Max, and Mr. Briny agreeing with this. As the night went on, Brock continued to comfort the Sharpedo with the help of his Lotad, who was staying by Brock to keep Brock comforted. It got so late though that Mr. Briny, Ash, May, and Max all went to bed, laying on little towel mats from Mr. Briny's boat, and even Brock fell asleep, using Sharpedo as a pillow accidentally because he basically just passed out because he was so tired, and Lotad also fell asleep in the water beside Brock. By morning, it was actually Sharpedo who woke up relatively early, seemingly meaning that Brock's efforts may have actually paid off. However, unfortunately, the first thing that Sharpedo saw when it woke up was Lotad sleeping next to it, and it became so angry upon seeing Lotad, due to Lotad being the one to attack it yesterday, that it didn't even notice Brock on top of it. So it went to attack Lotad, wanting its revenge. Thankfully, though, as Brock squirmed around on Sharpedo noticed that Brock had fallen asleep on top of it, and was able to recall, even though it was passed out, Brock taking care of it the night before. So it realized that it shouldn't take out its anger on Brock's Lotad, and should comfort Brock in exchange. So it calmed down and put its fin over Brock, hugging him as the Sharpedo eventually fell back asleep. The Sharpedo didn't sleep for much longer, though, as it was soon jolted awake, along with Ash and the gang and Briny and all of Ash and the gang's Pokemon, including Lotad, as they were alerted by the fence breaking as Team Rocket surfaced in their Magikarp sub. And right after the sub surfaced, it unleashed a net to capture Pikachu, and Team Rocket also decided to try and catch Mr. Briny's Pico, but the net missed and instead headed straight for Brock. However, the Sharpedo, respecting Brock now, pushed Brock out of the way and got caught itself, meaning Team Rocket now had caught Pikachu and Sharpedo. Team Rocket were obviously more than okay with their accidental Sharpedo capture, as they bragged about it as well as their Pikachu capture, and said their motto. Brock then cut their motto off and demanded that Team Rocket release Sharpedo immediately, explaining that it was poisoned and needed help, not to be captured. Upon hearing this, Jessie simply laughed as she realized what the source of the poison was, her Seviper's poison tail, declaring that it worked just fine. Brock was obviously immensely angry at Team Rocket for poisoning Sharpedo, but Team Rocket tried to defend themselves, claiming that Sharpedo attacked them first. Brock didn't care at all about Team Rocket's justifications, and just wanted to find a way to stop them, but he didn't know how, when suddenly he noticed Lotad swimming right by Team Rocket's Magikarp sub, and got the idea to tell Lotad to use Razor Leaf to cut the nets, and it did so, freeing Sharpedo and Pikachu, as they swam back to shore. Just when Pikachu made it back to shore, Ash of course told him to use his typical Thunderbolt to send Team Rocket blasting off, but he stopped mid-sentence, claiming that Pikachu didn't even need to bother, since they could just let their new friends handle Team Rocket. Team Rocket was obviously confused by why Ash had stopped the attack, so Ash just told them to look behind them, and they then saw that all of the Sharpedo that was just free led had returned to help out their leader, and they did so by using Headbutt on Team Rocket, sending them blasting off, also destroying Team Rocket's Magikarp sub. With Team Rocket gone, Brock went up to the leader Sharpedo to make sure it was doing okay, and Brock realized that the leader Sharpedo had recovered from the poison because of Brock's care, and the Sharpedo was very grateful for everything that Brock did for it, as were its entire group. So, to show their gratefulness, as Lotad jumped off of the leader Sharpedo, because Lotad was apparently on there after it freed Sharpedo from the net, and jumped into Brock's hands, all of the Sharpedo, including the leader, swarmed around Brock and began to nuzzle up against him, leading Brock to panic, believing that he would be hurt by their rough skin ability. Brock soon calmed down, though, as he realized that Sharpedo wasn't hurting him, and their skin actually felt smooth, not rough, and wondered why this was, leading Mr. Briny to explain that Sharpedo's rough skin only occurred when it was trying to battle opponents or catch their prey, and also explained, laughing, that they must really have liked Brock now. Basically, since they now viewed Brock as their friend and a trusted ally, their abilities didn't work on him anymore, because it only worked on foes. Brock was very happy to see that the Sharpedo now were thanking him and viewed him as their friend, and May and Max decided to try and pet the Sharpedo to see if they were comfortable around them as well, and sure enough, the Sharpedo must have known that May and Max were also good people, since they were friends with Brock, since when May and Max touched the Sharpedo, they didn't have rough skin. Ash pets the Sharpedo as well, and sure enough, he wasn't harmed either. Brock then asked the leader Sharpedo if it would be okay, and if Ash and the gang were okay to depart now, so that they could continue on their journey to Dewford, and the Sharpedo nodded, though only under the condition that the Sharpedo group could accompany Ash and the gang to Dewford, since they didn't want to separate with them quite yet, and Brock obviously agreed, as Ash and the gang and Briny hopped into the SS Wingle and eventually made their way to Dewford by evening, with the Sharpedo following. Yes, they had actually made it, guys. Once Ash and the gang got off the SS Wingle and arrived on Dewford Island's port, Mr. Briny revealed that he was now going to head for a city in Holland known as Slateport City, and wished Ash and the gang all the best, as they thanked Mr. Briny for all his help with getting them to Dewford, as he and his Pico left, saying goodbye to Ash and the gang. Ash and the gang then said goodbye to the Sharpedo group, which had indeed followed them to Dewford, and the Sharpedo group said goodbye back by waving their fins and swam off. Once Ash and the gang said goodbye to the Sharpedo, the episode then ends with Ash asking Pikachu if he was ready for their second Hoenn Gym battle, with Pikachu responding by pumping his fist up in the air, with Ash doing the same, determined to win. Now the only thing they had left to do was find the location of the Dewford Gym.